Yo, YouTube, what's up with your boy? Sports and Fitness Rants. I'm back, guys. Click that like button. Subscribe to my channel. What's up, y'all? Welcome back, guys. Welcome back, man. Got another great video for you guys today, as usual, man. You guys know the deal on this channel. So about setting the record straight, stopping the lies, stopping the narratives, stopping them from rewriting history, guys. And in this video, I want to talk about some comments I heard Tracy McGrady make. I don't know if it was a recent comment or a recent podcast or a recent interview. You can't keep track and keep up with these guys anymore. They're everywhere. These guys do every podcast they can. They're always saying the same nonsense all over the place. You can't keep up with these idiots. Tracy McGrady's the newest fool out here trying to backtrack some of his comments about Kobe Bryant. But I saw this clip of Tracy McGrady trying to brag about his defensive ability, his defensive prowess, talking about he shut down Dirk Nowitzki in the 2005 playoffs. And I'm listening to him speak, and I don't get what he's trying to say here. Again, Tracy McGrady trying to pump himself up, lacking any humility, talking about his defensive prowess and the defense he played against Dirk Nowitzki in the 2005 playoffs. We're going to talk about in this video because I don't know what he's trying to say here. I don't know what he's getting at with these comments. And I want to thank you guys, everyone across the world. Everyone across the states has been supporting my channel. Once again, guys, I am truly, truly humbled, man, by all support, guys. It really means a lot. Much respect to all you guys out there, man, the true basketball fans. And you guys know what to do. Turn the volume all the way up. Hit that play button. Remember, these videos are for educational purposes. And let's roll. So, yes, guys, like I said, man, I wanted to talk about these comments I heard from Tracy McGrady. Like I said, I don't know if it was a recent comment or what podcast he was on or if he was being interviewed, whatever the case may be. And he started to talk about his defense, right? Because he started to talk about how people don't give him credit for playing defense, or people say, oh, Tracy McGrady didn't play any defense. He didn't play any defense. And I don't get what Tracy McGrady is trying to say in this clip. He starts talking about the job that he did defensively against Dirk Nowitzki in the 2005 playoffs. Now, I hadn't really remembered that series. I couldn't really, think about it in my mind. So I'm like thinking in my mind, what is Tracy McGrady talking about? Like, what is he trying to get at? And basically what he's saying is, oh, go look at what I did to Dirk Nowitzki in that series. I took the challenge. I took it upon myself to lock him up, to play that defense on Dirk Nowitzki. And this is what he's saying in the clip. Then he proceeds to ask the person who's interviewing him, what were Dirk Nowitzki's numbers? He says, oh, what was Dirk Nowitzki's numbers? And I believe Dirk Nowitzki averaged like 21 points a game, like 9 rebounds or 8 rebounds, whatever it was. And like, I want to say like 3.5 assists it was for Dirk Nowitzki. Like a steal and a half and like, I don't know, maybe like a little bit over a block, I want to say. So they read off Dirk Nowitzki's numbers. And then Tracy McGrady said, yeah, what were his shooting percentages? This is what he responded. He said, what were his shooting percentages? And then the person says, I believe it was 35% from the field, which is horrendous for someone like Dirk Nowitzki. And I believe it was like 28% from the three-point line, which once again is horrendous for someone like Dirk Nowitzki. Now listen, in the NBA, during players' careers, they're going to have series like this. See, that's what we marvel when it comes to someone like Michael Jordan. I don't want to bring up Michael Jordan in this video, but we marveled at him because you can't really point to a series and say Michael Jordan was horrendous in that series. Yeah, we could talk about the 1995 series against the Orlando Magic, but was Michael Jordan really horrendous? Was he really bad in that series? He was more rusty to me. It seemed like he wasn't in the rhythm. He wasn't in the flow, but he wasn't horrendous. The man still averaged 30 in the series. So he wasn't horrendous. He just wasn't Michael Jordan, so the standard. But anyway, that's what we marvel about Michael Jordan, because you can't really say he had a horrendous series at really any point in time of his career. Yeah, he maybe had a bad game here and there, but an entire series, no. So Tracy McGrady is trying to highlight Dirk Nowitzki having a bad series by saying that it was because of me. And listen, I'll give Tracy McGrady credit for taking the challenge for guarding Dirk Nowitzki like he said in the clip. However, the problem I have with Tracy McGrady when he's making these comments and he's saying this stuff is that Tracy McGrady was never known as a defender. Did Tracy McGrady have potential? Absolutely, and I said that in a video, that Tracy McGrady had the potential to be one of the great two-way players, not only of his era, but of the history of the game, because of the dimensions, his long arms, his length, the way that he has athleticism, the way that he could jump. He had that potential to be a great two-way player like a Kobe Bryant, but he never turned into that. He took a backseat on defense, or defense took a backseat to his offensive skills, to the effort and energy he gave to the offensive end of the ball. It's not easy. Not everyone can give the same effort on both sides simultaneously. That's once again why Michael Jordan separated himself. Not even Will Chamberlain could do these kinds of things when it mattered most on both sides of the ball at that level. Kobe Bryant, he couldn't be that potent on both sides of the ball simultaneously like Michael Jordan was, right? So when you think about someone like Tracy McGrady, he had that potential, but he never saw it through, never worked on these things. Do you guys realize that Tracy McGrady sitting here talking about the defensive effort that he gave on Dirk Nowitzki in one series? Do you guys realize that they lost that series? Like, Tracy McGrady, I don't get what you're trying to say. You're bragging about a defensive effort that you gave against one of the great offensive players in the history of the game, Dirk Nowitzki. And you're bragging about the defensive effort you gave in a series you lost in 7 games. And let's not forget to mention that the Houston Rockets were up 2-0 in that series, guys. And the Dallas Mavericks proceeded to win the next 4 out of the last 5 games. So when we talk about Tracy McGrady and he's pumping himself up based off of the defense that he played, based off of Dirk Nowitzki's numbers, doesn't make any sense because you lost that series. So really, what did you do to impact the wins and the losses? And I'm not saying that Tracy McGrady played like crap. I believe he averaged 30 points a game in that series. I think Yao Ming averaged like 18 or something like that. And you had a couple of solid role players on that Houston Rockets team. I believe I remember they were coached by Jeff Van Gundy. So you had an excellent coach there. But Tracy McGrady was one of those guys that, like I said, was not known as being a two-way guy or a hella fighter rebounder or a guy that was a winner. He wasn't known as a leader. He wasn't known as a guy who had intangibles like that. He just didn't have that. That's why I told you that separated him and Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant was on another level as far as intangibles go, right? As far as mindset, the mentality, the grit, the heart, the effort. Tracy McGrady's not on that level, man. And there's nothing wrong with that because Kobe Bryant's legendary work ethic, his legendary mentality. Not many people are on Kobe Bryant's level in that regard. But for Tracy McGrady to sit there and brag about his defense in one series that he lost after being up 2-0, also bragging about his defensive effort for one series when this man's never made an all-defensive team. Not even one, guys. Not even one all-defensive team. I'm really baffled at guys that think that they're elite defenders or good, great defenders when they've never made an all-defensive team. I mean, my God, there's a reason why they have all-defensive team selections. They're trying to highlight, right, and give credit to the guys that play defense, right? So they're giving you props. They're giving you some recognition. You're on the all-defensive team, right? They have a first and a second team. Tracy McGrady's never made either one of them. Not even one time, guys. You guys realize Dan Marley has made more all-defensive teams than Tracy McGrady. I mean, like, it's crazy when people try to knock some of these guys from the 90s era, like Dan Marley as a slow, unathletic white guy. But Dan Marley was an athlete. Dan Marley gave effort, and he played defense. He had defensive skills that he utilized. It allowed him to make a couple of all-defensive second teams. Tracy McGrady's never even made an all-defensive second team even once. But they talk about those guys in the 90s and the 80s as being bums or not being that great or any of these kinds of things. So I don't get how Tracy McGrady can brag about his defense on Dirk Nowitzki, not saying that he did not give a solid effort or play defense in that series. When you never made an all-defensive team, you were never known as a defender because of that. Tracy McGrady's trying to basically highlight and prove that he did play defense. He was a defender by highlighting a series that you played against Dirk Nowitzki that you were effective, but you lost after being up 2-0. I don't get what Tracy McGrady's trying to say here. All you're doing is embarrassing yourself. That's really all you're doing is highlighting another series that you lost because we all know Tracy McGrady couldn't get out the first round. But he wants to try to put himself up there as a defender. When people say, or when Tracy McGrady says that people say I don't play defense or I didn't play defense or I wasn't a defender, that's not them knocking you as saying that you never played defense. You didn't give effort on defense. No one said you stood around like LeBron James in the corner of the court and just stood there walking around lollygagging. No one's ever said that. But when people say, oh, you're not a defender, you were never known as a defender, you didn't play defense, they're making a general statement as far as your defensive prowess and what you did compared to your contemporaries, the guys who are known as defenders. So when you think about Kobe Bryant in that comparison, he's nowhere on the level of Kobe Bryant defensively. And it's not because he didn't have the potential or the body type or the athleticism. It's because he didn't have the effort. He didn't give the effort. He didn't have the mindset. Remember, playing defense, guys, half of defense is your effort and your mentality. You have to have the mindset to play defense. You have to want to play defense. It's not sexy. It's not going to get you a lot of money. It's not going to get you the fame, right? But you have to want to do it. It's a mindset. Tracy McGrady never took that challenge like that. And I'm not knocking him for it, but then you can't turn around and try to talk about your defense after your career's concluded and you never made an all-defensive team. It ain't like Tracy McGrady made 2 or 3 all-defensive teams and then you can point to a time in his career that this guy was giving the effort on defense and he was recognized for his defensive abilities and his defensive prowess. Can't say this. And I don't want to hear about the injuries for Tracy McGrady because Tracy McGrady had about 5 or 6 years there where he was an all-star player, where he made all-NBA selections, but never made an all-NBA defensive team. And remember, there was no minimum at that time. So it wasn't like Tracy McGrady had to play a minimum of 65 games to make an all-defensive team. He could have played 50 games, 55 games and made the all-defensive team, but he never did this. So for you to brag about your defensive effort in one series is insane when you lost that series and you never made an all-defensive team. No one thinks of you as a defender. No one's saying that you were crap on defense. No one's saying that you didn't try to play defense or give effort on defense, but you're not recognized as one of the great elite defenders. No one's going to put Tracy McGrady on a list of top 10, top 20 great defenders in NBA's history. Like when you think about some of the guys, some of the contemporaries, the guys that he played against with in his era, Tracy McGrady was not known as a defender. Kobe Bryant was known as a defensive player. Guys like Bruce Bowen were known as defensive players. The Shane Battiers were known as defensive players. Someone like Doug Christie was known as a defensive player. Andre Kirilenko. These were known as the top defensive guys at those wing positions, the 2 guard, the small forward position. Someone like a Gerald Wallace, for example, even to me, was a greater defensive player than Tracy McGrady. And all the guys that I mentioned made at least one all-defensive team in their career. Joe Wallace, I believe, made one all-defensive team. We all know Bruce Bowen made like 8 or 9. We all know about Kobe Bryant's defensive prowess. The Shane Battiers, the Doug Christies. I believe those guys at least made one all-defensive team. However, they also had reputations and were known as defensive players. So Shane Battier was known as the defensive guy. The Ron Artests, right? These guys were known as defensive guys. Tayshaun Prince. These guys were known as defenders, all right? They had reputations of this. Tracy McGrady didn't have the reputation of a defensive player. He had the reputation of just a very good overall player, Tracy McGrady. And he was always recognized, which is weird to me how Tracy McGrady will come out now and act as if people were disrespecting him. Tracy McGrady was always recognized. Whenever people talked about the great scorers, the guys that had overall bags, that had skills, scoring the ball, Tracy McGrady's name would always come up because people recognize his overall skills and what he could do scoring the ball. And we've also talked about Tracy McGrady as one of the biggest what-ifs. So people gave Tracy McGrady his credit, man. Like I said, when you talk about what-ifs, you always think about guys like Tracy McGrady, the Anthony Hardaways, the Bill Waltons, the Derrick Roses, right? And some of the other guys, Reggie Lewis, the Len Biases, right? Some of these tragedies that happened with some of these guys down the road. What was the other guy's name? You guys know, man. Now, of course, I'm not going to remember his name because I was just thinking about this guy the other day. Hank Gathers, right? Hank Gathers. What about Hank Gathers? Some of these guys, these are big what-ifs in the history of the NBA. So Tracy McGrady gets his props. He gets his just due. Tracy McGrady's got the Scottie Pippen syndrome going on again. Let me pump myself up and let me celebrate myself because I don't feel I was being celebrated enough. And like I said, the way you try to celebrate yourself doesn't add up. You were not that dude. And you're bragging about a series going Dirk Nowitzki, which you lost. I don't get these guys. You guys know the deal, man. I'll catch you guys on the next one.